And I felt, you're losing people every single time you have those headlines. We all get that there's a really big urgent message.
A shocking royal revelation has sent Buckingham Palace into a frenzy. In a move no one anticipated, Prince William reportedly confirmed tragic news that could forever alter Meghan Markle's future, igniting whispers of tension, strategy, and power behind the palace gates. Legal strikes, brand isolation, and a calculated royal response have already begun to ripple across the globe. But what exactly did the future king uncover, and how will this unprecedented action reshape the monarchy, Catherine's protection, and the fragile balance of royal influence? The shocking discovery at dawn. At exactly 5 o'clock in the morning, long before the sun had begun to rise over the Norfolk countryside, Prince William sat alone in the kitchen of Anmer Hall. The house was quiet, except for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. Outside, darkness still held the world in its grip, but inside, the lights cast a stark, almost clinical glow over the wooden table where the prince had spread out his morning reading. Today's report was unlike anything he had encountered before, and he knew instinctively that it would change everything. The dossier lying before him was no ordinary collection of news clippings or gossip from tabloid headlines. It was a forensic investigation, painstakingly compiled, cross-referenced, and verified by intelligence professionals. Every page contained evidence of a coordinated hate campaign directed at Catherine, the Princess of Wales.
I've seen that experiences such as homelessness, addiction, and poor mental health,
Tracing the attacks not to random critics or anonymous trolls, but to highly organized networks based in the United States. What made the report especially alarming was the financial trail, a complex web of shell companies, donations, and anonymous funding channels, all leading back to Montecito, California. The picture that emerged was terrifyingly clear. This was not casual commentary or chance outrage. This was a deliberate, methodical operation aimed at dismantling Catherine's reputation and, by extension, undermining the monarchy itself. William's eyes scanned the pages, memorizing names, IP addresses, timestamps, and financial transfers. Each line, each statistic, and each digital fingerprint told a story of calculation and intent. Within moments, the gravity of the situation hit him with full force. This was not a minor problem that could be ignored or brushed aside. The attacks were organized, funded, and purposeful. The more he read, the more he understood that the consequences would not be temporary or minor. They could ripple through the royal family, destabilize relationships, and alter public perception in ways that might be impossible to repair. As he absorbed the details, a cold fury began to take hold, the kind of anger that combines personal loyalty with a sense of duty. William thought of Catherine, recovering from the physical and emotional toll of chemotherapy.
It was thought that my condition was non-cancerous. The surgery was successful.
Trying to step back into public life while facing a wave of calculated cruelty online. The injustice of it was staggering. This was not commentary, debate, or scrutiny. It was a targeted digital assault designed to exploit vulnerability and inflict maximum harm. In that small, quiet kitchen, William made a decision. Silence was no longer an option. The old royal motto, "Never complain, never explain," could not protect her here. This was bigger than headlines or public opinion. This was a calculated attack on a woman he loved and on the institution they represented. Action would be required, swift and decisive, and the path ahead was irreversible. By the time the first hints of dawn crept over the Sandringham estate, the future king had already begun plotting his next move. The dossier had revealed more than a campaign of hate. It had exposed the scale, the intent, and the network behind it. And in that moment, William realized that protecting Catherine meant taking the fight directly to the architects of this digital war. The era of passive endurance had ended. William got an intelligence report of a coordinated attack on his wife via a U.S. network. But how will he address it? Will he ignore it as nothing? Or will the weight of the report compel him to take decisive action? Let's find out. William's immediate response. Before the first light of dawn could touch the Norfolk skies, Prince William had already made a decision that would ripple through the royal family, the media, and Meghan Markle's world. He did not hesitate. There was no second guessing, no waiting for approval or advice. The dossier in front of him, detailing a relentless, coordinated attack on Catherine, had made one thing painfully clear. Action was required, and it had to be swift, strategic, and absolute. With a calm but deadly seriousness, William issued a single, chilling directive. Execute the protection protocol. Those 4 words carried weight far beyond the walls of Anmer Hall. They signaled the start of a carefully orchestrated response, one designed to shield his wife, defend the monarchy, and send a stark message to anyone daring to undermine either. The measures he set in motion were immediate and far-reaching. First, the Sussexes were classified as persona non grata.
Put together, it means ensuring the brightest and boldest amongst us, in all sectors of society.
Within the inner circles of the royal family, invitations to official engagements, state functions, and private gatherings would no longer be extended. Every previous gesture of inclusion was effectively erased, sending a clear message. Proximity to the crown was no longer guaranteed. Next came a legal and digital barricade, a firewall between the monarchy and Montecito. Any attempts to use royal names, privileges, or associations for personal gain would now meet with swift and uncompromising resistance. The plan was precise: prevent leaks, halt the spread of damaging narratives, and ensure that Catherine could no longer be targeted through unauthorized channels. The repercussions extended into the commercial sphere. All partnerships, sponsorships, and brand deals tied to the Sussexes were immediately frozen. William understood that in today's world, influence isn't just social or political, it is also financial. By cutting off access to the monarchy's power and prestige, he was neutralizing the commercial engine that allowed attacks to thrive, making it clear that any attempt to profit from royal association would no longer be tolerated. Simultaneously, top U.S. media companies received direct private warnings.
It is the most vulnerable, those with the fewest resources, and those who have done the least to cause climate change.
The legal consequences of broadcasting unverified claims, amplifying coordinated attacks, or participating in harassment campaigns were laid out in no uncertain terms. William's strategy wasn't just reactive, it was preemptive. By drawing a clear line, he was telling media giants, influencers, and operatives alike that crossing it would have serious repercussions. Finally, every remaining bridge to the royal family, personal, public, and private, was effectively severed. Past attempts at reconciliation, quiet diplomacy, or leniency were replaced with strategic isolation. The Sussexes were no longer just distanced socially. They were formally, legally, and symbolically set apart from the institution that had once provided connection, prestige, and influence. This wasn't merely about protecting Catherine.
Having been lucky enough to meet some of our country's amazing charities and organizations,
It was a decisive, formal confirmation that Meghan's future, both politically, socially, and commercially, had shifted. The rules had changed. The playing field had been redrawn. William's actions made one thing unmistakably clear. In this battle, the safety, dignity, and authority of the Princess of Wales came first, and anyone threatening it would face consequences both immediate and lasting. The dawn had yet to break fully over Anmer Hall, but the course of the monarchy and Meghan Markle's future had already been irrevocably altered. A decisive action was taken to protect Catherine from attacks, which inevitably impacts Meghan's future within the monarchy. But is William going too far? And just how much harm has the hate campaign caused Catherine? Now, let's dive into Catherine's silent struggle. Illness, cruelty, and William's breaking point. Catherine had just emerged from one of the most grueling chapters of her life, chemotherapy. Every day had been a battle against fatigue, nausea, and the lingering shadows of fear, yet the world outside seemed indifferent to her struggle. While she fought for her health behind the quiet walls of Unmer Hall, the digital world outside was a very different kind of battlefield. Coordinated online attacks, fueled by bots and conspiracy theories spreading across TikTok and other social platforms, began to swarm. These weren't casual critics or ordinary social media users. They were part of a meticulously orchestrated campaign designed to undermine her, ridicule her, and erode her dignity. Every post, every video, every comment seemed aimed at one goal: to question Catherine's commitment, to mock her appearance, and to twist her recovery into fodder for gossip. Observers who didn't know her personally might have seen only a poised public figure making slow steps back into royal duties. But William, watching from the sidelines, knew the truth. He could see the physical toll, the quiet exhaustion, and the invisible burden of carrying both her illness and the scrutiny of the world. One morning, he entered the room and found Catherine sitting by the window, the grey Norfolk light falling softly across her face.
Mental health is best supported in all those around children and raising the next generation today.
She wasn't crying, she wasn't speaking, she was simply sitting there, holding a tablet, silent except for a single question that pierced straight through him. Why do they hate me for surviving? Those words, fragile yet profound, struck William with the force of a thunderclap. They were a reminder that the old ways of the monarchy, the time-honored motto of never complain, never explain, were no longer enough. That code, meant to protect dignity and composure, now exposed her to relentless attacks. Silence, once considered noble and virtuous, had become a shield that left her defenseless. To watch someone he loved endure both illness and cruelty in equal measure was unbearable. Protecting her could no longer be a quiet, private duty. It demanded decisive action. In that moment, William understood the stakes. The attacks were not random or harmless. They were deliberate, calculated, and designed to cause maximum damage. Catherine's survival, her strength, her resilience, and her grace had become the target. To continue ignoring it would be more than risky. It would be abandonment, a betrayal of the very values the Crown claimed to uphold. He knew that action was necessary. Legal steps, public strategy, and careful coordination would be required to shield her from the digital assault. It wasn't just about defending her reputation or her image. It was about safeguarding her peace, her dignity, and her right to heal without fear. The world had to see not only her courage, but also the protection that her family could and would provide. From that quiet gray morning in Unmer Hall, William's resolve was clear. Silence was no longer an option. To stand by would be complicity. To act would be a statement of love, loyalty, and authority. In the realm of social media chaos, calculated attacks, and relentless scrutiny, the future king realized that protection was no longer optional. It was a duty, and it would redefine the way the royal family defended its own.
Just about happy, healthy children. This is about the society I hope we could and can become.
Catherine was still recovering from an illness and needed both emotional and mental support to fully heal, which explains her husband's decisive action. But is the king aware of William's move? What does he think about it? Could he have handled things differently? Now, let's explore the California nexus. hard evidence that forced the king's hand. The early morning air at Wood Farm was crisp, almost unnervingly still, as Prince William carried the dossier into King Charles's study. The weight of the report in his hands seemed heavier than the leather-bound binding suggested. Each page was a meticulous record of a digital assault so calculated that it left no room for doubt or hesitation. William knew that what he was about to reveal would demand immediate attention, not just for his wife Catherine, but for the very integrity of the monarchy itself. As Charles adjusted his reading glasses,
is complete nonsense, because the two situations are completely different.
William placed the dossier carefully on the polished oak desk. The findings were chilling. Moments after Catherine announced her return, thousands of bot accounts sprang to life, flooding social media with identical attacks designed to mock, undermine, and intimidate her. This was no random criticism. Every post, comment, and video was part of a calculated, coordinated digital assault, like a perfectly synchronized army. These messages created the illusion of overwhelming public hostility, targeting the Princess of Wales with ruthless precision and intent. But the dossier went deeper.
It's really important to stress that we can't take a fatalistic outlook on this either, for those who haven't had.
It traced a financial trail through a network of shell companies, winding its way from anonymous accounts to donors in Montecito, California. This wasn't accidental. The money had been funneled with purpose, funding an infrastructure that allowed these attacks to scale rapidly and efficiently. The report made it clear that this was an organized effort, a digital campaign engineered to harm Catherine's reputation and manipulate public perception using both technology and capital in equal measure. William's voice was steady, yet charged with urgency, as he explained the implications. The dossier showed a chilling level of sophistication. Every bot, every account, every post was timed to perfection, designed to coincide with Catherine's announcements, public appearances, and even small gestures that might otherwise have gone unnoticed. The attacks weren't spontaneous, and they weren't isolated. They were systematic, deliberate, and unmistakably orchestrated. Charles leaned back, the full weight of the evidence settling on him. This wasn't a family disagreement or a private quarrel. This was digital warfare, conducted with precision and strategy, targeting not just Catherine as an individual, but the monarchy as an institution. The report left no ambiguity. Ignoring it was no longer an option. Protecting Catherine was inseparable from protecting the crown itself. To do nothing would be to allow an invisible enemy to chip away at both her dignity and the authority of the monarchy, weaponizing silence into vulnerability. For a moment, the study was silent. The only sound, the soft rustle of papers and the distant caw of crows outside. Then Charles spoke, his voice measured but firm. The stakes were clear, and the need for immediate, decisive action could no longer be debated. William had made the threat undeniable. Digital manipulation, the fight to defend his wife's reputation, was the fight to defend the monarchy's honor. Every second counted. In that quiet, tense room at Wood Farm, the future king and the reigning monarch reached a shared understanding. This was no ordinary crisis. It required strategy, speed, and precision. Catherine's protection was not a personal preference. It was a duty, and the dossier made one thing clear. The age of silence had ended, and the crown could not afford to wait. The evidence provided by William shows that the attacks on his wife were calculated and that the culprits must be dealt with. But could Meghan have been excused? Or is there clear proof that mocking Catherine means nothing to her? Let's uncover the details. Meghan's subtle swipe. Meghan Markle appeared to send a subtle but unmistakable message aimed at the Princess of Wales, during the much-anticipated Christmas special of her Netflix show. With love, Meghan. Holiday celebration aired at a moment that could not have been more carefully timed, on the very same day that King Charles and Queen Camilla were hosting the high-profile German state visit, and mere hours after Princess Catherine had published a heartfelt personal letter to guests attending her annual carol concert on Friday. The alignment of events made the special feel almost like a carefully choreographed counterpoint, a quiet spotlight on Meghan, while the palace's attention was elsewhere. On the surface, the episode appeared innocent and festive. Meghan, clad in matching bright red holiday pajamas, was joined by her closest friends as they celebrated the season. They laughed, crafted personalized Christmas crackers, and shared cozy, intimate moments designed to give viewers a sense of warmth and cheer. But for those watching closely, one particular exchange suggested a far deeper subtext, a subtle nudge, or perhaps a sly commentary directed at Princess Catherine's well-known and highly scrutinized sartorial choices. The scene unfolded during a segment in which Meghan was joined by her longtime friends, Lindsay Jill Roth and Kelly Ziafin. As the trio focused on assembling Christmas wreaths, Roth casually asked a question that seemed innocent but carried an unspoken subtext. "Aren't bows in right now?" Meghan's response was delivered with a quiet, knowing coyness. "That's what you told me." The small, almost throwaway line was loaded with potential meaning. It suggested awareness, perhaps even a gentle challenge, to the scrutiny and commentary that often surrounds the Princess of Wales. Roth, attempting to keep the mood light, complimented Meghan, saying, "I like how loose yours is."
I want to tell you a story that'll sort of give context to my being here and my work with UN Women.
"That looks great." Meghan, not missing a beat, replied with a playful yet slightly pointed remark. "Well, it's just the beginning." Roth followed up with a simple, cheerful acknowledgement. "Yeah, but it's fun." To the casual viewer, this exchange might have seemed innocent, even whimsical, a simple back and forth between friends making holiday crafts. But in the highly charged atmosphere of royal scrutiny and public commentary, every word, gesture, and glance is magnified. Meghan's words could be interpreted as a subtle assertion, a moment of light-hearted defiance, or even a calculated reminder that she, too, commands attention and influence in the public eye. The timing and context amplified the impact of the moment. While the King and Queen were hosting foreign dignitaries and Catherine was engaging in a traditional, charitable, and personal royal act, Meghan's carefully staged and casually confident presence on screen created a sharp contrast. The bright red pajamas.
As you'll likely hear many times this week, look, as we just heard, you'll hear all sorts of things.
The effortless humor and the understated but pointed conversation all served to reinforce her individuality and willingness to speak, even subtly, in a space where every action is parsed and judged. In essence, this small scene from With Love, Meghan, holiday celebration was more than just festive cheer. It was a layered, carefully choreographed moment that, whether intended as such or not, could be read as a quiet assertion of identity and influence. It reminded the public that even in moments of celebration, subtle gestures can speak volumes, and that in the world of royalty and media, timing, tone, and nuance are everything. Meghan's actions with her friends may have seemed casual, but they carried the weight of undermining Catherine and the monarchy. How will the institution respond to this? Could Meghan get away with such a bold move? Now, let's unravel how royal insiders executed the palace's ruthless plan to isolate the Sussexes. The Sandringham War Council. As the early morning mist still clung to the Norfolk countryside, a convoy of sleek Range Rovers carried Prince William, King Charles, Queen Camilla, and Princess Anne across the private roads connecting Anmer Hall to Wood Farm. Inside, the atmosphere was tense, charged with a mixture of urgency, resolve, and quiet fury. The destination was the Long Library, a room lined with towering shelves of books, a place of history and strategy, now transformed into a command center for one of the most consequential meetings in recent royal memory. At the center of the long, polished table lay the dossier everyone had been waiting for, the California Nexus. The thick file, sealed in layers of encryption and marked with the gravitas of intelligence work, detailed the orchestrated attacks against Catherine, tracing them back to networks operating in the United States. Every line, every page, every chart was a roadmap of influence, deceit, and malice. It was more than a report. It was a declaration of a battle that had been quietly raging, one that the royal family could no longer ignore. The discussion that followed was precise, strategic, and unflinching. There would be no public statements, no headlines that could be twisted or misinterpreted. Diplomacy would not be messy. It would be controlled, deliberate, and unyielding. Half measures would not suffice. This was a problem that required total, unwavering action. The Sussexes would face a legal, diplomatic, and commercial lockdown. Every avenue of influence, every connection to the crown, and every platform that had been used to attack Catherine would be deferred, blocked, and neutralized. William's voice cut through the quiet with clarity and intensity. His argument was simple, yet uncompromising. Ignoring the attacks would leave Catherine exposed and vulnerable. The very principles the monarchy had long upheld, decorum, patience, the silent endurance of public scrutiny, were now liabilities. Passion would not preserve dignity. It would invite further harm. The digital, commercial, and social mechanisms that had been weaponized against Catherine had to be dismantled, and it was the family's duty to do it decisively. Both Camilla and Anne, women well acquainted with the corrosive effects of public scrutiny and media intrusion, nodded in agreement. Their voices, calm but resolute, emphasized one point repeatedly: the oxygen feeding the attacks had to be cut off completely. There could be no middle ground, no half steps. Every channel, every network, every sympathetic platform amplifying the attacks needed to feel the full weight of the palace's authority. Charles, long accustomed to the weight of history and the patience required of a monarch, finally put pen to paper. By signing the orders, he transformed discussion into action. The palace, unified in purpose, was ready. The instructions were clear. The Sussexes would be isolated, their influence curtailed, and Catherine would be protected. The plan wasn't about vengeance. It was about security, dignity, and survival. As the four senior royals looked around the table, there was a quiet acknowledgement of what had just been set in motion. For the first time in weeks, the monarchy moved not as a collection of individuals, but as a single, strategic unit, focused, resolute, and uncompromising. The California Nexus dossier had not just informed them, it had galvanized them. The palace stood united, Catherine was protected, and the Sussexes now faced a reality that had been irrevocably altered. But how effective was the decision of the palace leaders? And what does it mean for the future of the monarchy? Now, let's uncover how William's bold strategy crippled Meghan's influence. The global fallout. By early afternoon, the consequences of William's decisive actions were already becoming painfully clear. Across the Atlantic, U.S. media outlets scrambled to adjust. Interviews that had been scheduled to defend, explain, or amplify Meghan Markle's narrative were quietly canceled. Producers, fearing the legal consequences outlined in the Norfolk Decree, pulled back without fanfare.
I want to tell you a story that'll sort of give context to my being here and my work with UN Women.
The subtle but unmistakable message was understood. Palace would not tolerate further attacks or exploitation. Simultaneously, Meghan's commercial partnerships began to unravel. Brand deals that had once seemed unshakable were paused or quietly withdrawn. Hollywood allies who had once courted proximity to the Sussex brand began to distance themselves, unwilling to risk conflict with the crown. Within hours, the empire of influence, social leverage, and commercial opportunity that had surrounded Meghan began to collapse. The very networks and structures that had amplified her visibility and power were now neutralized, leaving a stark void where influence had once thrived. Public perception, too, began to shift. Social media chatter and international commentary reflected a subtle but profound change in the narrative. Prince William, long seen by some as reserved and dutiful, was now being recognized for a different role: protector, husband, and strategic guardian. Where once discussions had focused on Meghan's charisma or her standing in the media, they now highlighted William's steadfastness, his willingness to act decisively to defend those he loved. In the eyes of many, he was no longer merely a future king. He was a man who would stop at nothing to protect his family, a figure of loyalty and courage in a storm of modern scrutiny. 3 days later, the impact of these decisions was visible in public life. William accompanied Catherine on a quiet, low-key engagement, a rare appearance designed not for fanfare, but for reassurance. Observers noted his posture, his gestures, the subtle ways he positioned himself to shield her from potential intrusion. His protective presence sent a clear, unspoken message. The walls had been built, the danger contained, and Catherine was safe. The careful choreography of their movement, the understated signals of security, spoke louder than any official statement could. Back at Anmer Hall, the transformation was felt in the quieter spaces of family life. The children played freely in the garden, their laughter echoing across the manicured lawns. Inside, William and Catherine watched them, hand in hand. The silence of the home was no longer tense or fraught with anxiety. It was imbued with relief, peace, and a quiet sense of triumph. The Norfolk Decree, though legal and strategic in its execution, had become something far more intimate, a vow of protection, a public and private declaration of love, and a lesson in courage and dignity. In that moment, it was clear that William's actions had achieved more than shutting down a network of attacks. They had reaffirmed the role of family as the ultimate priority of the monarchy. They had redefined what strength looked like in an age of media chaos, decisiveness paired with care, courage combined with compassion, and a readiness to defend the vulnerable at all costs. The Norfolk Decree was no longer just a strategy. It was a statement about values, love, and the responsibilities that come with power. So, what do you think about Prince William's actions? Could Meghan ever recover from the palace's unprecedented move? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.